Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm gonna sit over here because I wanted to have a feeling that we're all sitting around together in a circle, kind of when our elders have fires and then we sit in youth and elder circles and we listen to each other. Because I really think that Amy has created a type of conference that is very different, that's about connection and about listening to each other. So I hope we can walk in the spirit throughout the conference. So welcome again. Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much. Round of applause for Amy. And the whole team that has made this possible. My name is Xiye Bastida. I'm a youth climate activist from Mexico, from a community called Otomi Toltec in central Mexico. And I grew up as part of a community that has both had a lot of climate impacts and impacts on pollution and destruction, but also has been resilient and has shown me what it's like to live a life of being a defender, a life of being almost like a warrior for the planet. And so today I'm going to share with you some insights and some knowledge so that we can all, as a climate movement, move forward with what I think is some of the most important things that my elders have taught me. And I share this with you with a lot of care and with an intention that you will take this knowledge responsibly. So I ask you that you touch into your heart and listen to what you need to hear. Somebody once told me, you can give a speech of 15 minutes and a person will remember one thing. And whatever your thing is, take it with you throughout the rest of the conference and throughout the rest of your work. I always start my speeches by telling people that my parents met at the first ever climate summit in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. And I think that just allows me to go straight into it, right? Because I don't have to explain why I am here. I'm here because I'm my parents' daughter. And you're here because you're creating a new legacy for your future children as well, if not already your current children, grandchildren, your legacy. And so, but something I don't tell people is that my mother is a timekeeper. She has studied the Mayan calendar for 22 years, my same age. It all started when she was sitting in front of a computer and she was looking for names. My name is Xiye, soft rain in Otomi, and she wanted to look for names that would represent who I am about my culture. And looking up names, one of the very popular cultures that you might be familiar with in Mexico, indigenous communities, is the Mayan. Who here has heard of the Mayan? Yeah, everybody? Because the world was going to end in 2012, right? Who remembers that? And my mom, ever since, she was looking up names, and there was a little thing on the computer that said, look at your Mayan calendar, your Mayan kind of zodiac, which we don't use the same words. And she got this message that the timekeeping that had been presented to her about the Mayan was wrong. So for 22 years, the last 22 years of her life, she has been doing everything to understand the Mayan calendar. And now we are in a position where she has done 22 years of research. She's a researcher. She has a PhD on it. And what she has found is the following. The actual date for when the past calendar ended, which we were all told it was 2012 December, the actual date is May 3rd, 2013. And the Mayan calendar says that there is a 13-year of time of transformation, so 2013 to 2026. And we are now in the middle of that time of transformation according to the Mayan calendar. Now, you might not believe this with, there's the research, there's the rocks, the Mayans look at the sky for thousands of years. But there is no doubt that we are in a time of transformation, that this is a tumultuous time where we have been taught as humanity that we are not being resilient enough for the challenges that we are facing. And so I step into this work knowing that these 13 years that we have been living are for us to figure out how we're going to start the next cycle, the cycle that starts in 2026. And that is very soon, May 3rd, 2026. And because I know that this is a time of transformation, I know that this is a time for openness, where humanity is relearning a lot of things, where humanity is, we're settling into new types of knowledge. We're going back to indigenous knowledge. As Tony talked about, we're getting mainstream, but what does that really mean? The world needs our knowledge. The world needs the knowledge of the elders and the knowledge of the earth. And so I'm going to give you very concrete things so that you can think through and hopefully bring into your work as well. The first thing is that, as we all know, Mother Earth is also a timekeeper. And everything that the earth does takes its time. The rock takes time to erode, and it takes its time. The tree takes its time to grow. You cannot rush the growing of the tree. The planet takes its time to spin and go around the sun. And indigenous peoples have looked at the cycles of the earth for thousands of years. We have understood the cycles of the land, the cycles of the water, of how we really tap into what the earth is telling us. And the planet has been around for 4.6 billion years, and scientists don't know exactly how water arrived to the planet. We think maybe it was a meteorite that crashed or something. But what is true is that the water that we have today is the same as the water that we had at the very beginning of the creation of this planet. And the same water has cycled through the earth through billions and billions of years, and water carries the history of those 4 billion years. And we're here writing our history on water as well. So we need to learn to respect those cycles of the earth. Because now we go on to the next timekeeping, which is the timekeeping of humans. We have disrespected the times of the earth. Everything we want is about making it faster and more efficient. How do we get there faster? How do we make the crops go faster? And by doing that, we are degrading land. We're pumping so much oil and fossil fuels out of the ground because we want everything to go faster. And that is the root, in my opinion, of why we are in this crisis. We are out of tune with the cycles of the earth. And then we have, I think, where two worlds meet. The time of the earth and the time of humans seen through a lens of harmony, of balance, which is the fact that indigenous communities over all of this time that cultures have developed have learned how to type into those very, very almost like subtle cycles. I mean, they're very localized cycles. For example, Lila June, she's a good friend of mine. She does research on how indigenous communities have been able to create biodiversity. And now, a lot of the times we think of ourselves, of humans and creation, we think that we create destruction, and that's what we do as our impact, as our footprint. But the reality is that indigenous communities have been creators of biodiversity. And some of the most biodiverse spots on the planet are what they are because of the land caring of indigenous communities. For example, who here knew that the Amazon rainforest has some of the most unfertile land in the world? It was over a process of 4,000 years that indigenous knowledge of land caring were able to create this much topsoil that has been the place for biodiversity to happen. And in 1 acre in the Amazon rainforest, there is more biodiversity than in all of North America combined. And it's because of that knowledge of tapping into the subtleties of hearing the land speak. I have a poem that I want to share with you, if that's okay. I'm just giving you a heads up. And who here also has heard about the planetary boundaries? Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so Johan Rockström has done a really good job. And the planetary boundaries have taught us that we are surpassing the limits of what the Earth can handle. Right now, we are using the resources each year of 1.75 Earths. And we're still talking about making things faster and growing more and growing our economies. But we cannot grow in a finite planet when we're already surpassing the natural capacity of the Earth to regenerate. And a lot of the things that I'm saying and the indigenous communities have been saying and the climate movement as a whole, we have been saying is that our economic system has to change. And that's why we haven't been heard, because it's how do we change the economic system and how do we tell the economic system to slow down? And that is one of the questions that we really have to get together as a climate movement and think through, because the earth cannot handle this overexplosion anymore. And we are, remember, again, in a time of transformation. So it is the time to think through those questions, those difficult questions. And a lot of you here have those ideas and are going to present on those ideas. There are some principles that I want to share with you. Tony started sharing some, and I'm going to give you a bit of a different perspective on them from what you have probably already heard. The first is the principle of reciprocity, and it is something that is very innate in Indigenous communities, but I also think that it is part of our human nature to be reciprocal. Reciprocity is that when you give, you also know how to receive, and when you take, you also know how to give. And Indigenous communities, we have been living in reciprocal relationships with nature forever, because we take from the earth, yes, but we also nurture and give back. And I think our economic system today is founded on the same principles. Investors are giving money to receive value back. We just haven't agreed on our definition of value. We haven't agreed that for some, wealth and value is monetary, while for me, wealth and value is the amount of biodiversity that there is in my land and my territory. And so I think we already know how to work in systems of reciprocity, of how to invest and know how to receive. We just need to reframe it so that nature isn't worth more than when it's alive. The next principle is the principle of presence, and I think we already heard Tony talk about presence. There is this beautiful hike that I had one day in Vancouver, well, not in Vancouver, in Canada, but from Vancouver north. And I was walking down the beach, and I remember that the harder that you walked, your footprint would be imprinted on the sand. Everybody has had that experience. And then when you lift up your foot, it would take a little bit for the sand to settle, and then your footprint could maybe disappear with the water. And I realized that we have been walking too hard. We have been walking with the intention to leave our footprint, and we've always been told that that is what we are supposed to do, leave our footprint everywhere we go. But have we thought about how our footprint is actually harming the earth? Have we thought about the fact that if we walk softer, we can still make it to where we need to be, but we have a different relationship with each step that we take? One time I heard somebody say, we should walk on the earth like she feels pain. But I think we should walk on the earth like she feels love, because she does. And that is on presence, on the fact that all of your ancestors and mine have done so much spiritual work for us to be here in order to shift and go towards that future that we need to build and imagine. The next principle is on generations, and we have heard about the 7-generation principle, about how Indigenous communities think in 7 generations, the wisdom of the 7 generations for the stability of 7 generations. But let me show you how close 7 generations are to you. Mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter. It is really not that much time for us 7 generations to happen. We can all meet 7 generations in our own lifetimes, and our organizing rooms don't look like that. I remember going to this board meeting once. I was allowed to sit in, and I was really excited because I'd never been to one before. And I realized they sit in a circle and they talk very candidly. All the phones are away, and I thought, this is just like the circles in my community when we listen to each other differently. And I think that is just some tendencies that humans have, to actually sit around each other and think through things together. The next principle is on reverence, and a lot of us don't think about how we need to have reverence for this beautiful planet that Mother Earth has built for us. It is hard for me to sometimes tell people the reason why we need to be activists or change makers or protectors or defenders is because we owe everything that we have to Mother Earth. Every single sip of water we have ever taken, every bite we have ever eaten, and every step we have ever taken is only possible because Mother Earth made it possible. So how are we giving back? And we are also that same extension of life of the earth. In my language, the word for skin is the same as the word for the outer layer of the earth. When we hurt the earth, we hurt ourselves. Now I'm going to share that poem that I was talking to you about. It's something that I wrote when I just felt kind of this connection. I think a lot of the times we think of our climate stories as stories that have to do with a disaster. But I think our climate stories should be those stories of reconnection. It's called Precious. And I remembered that the earth is precious, that the ocean is alive, that my skin breathes like the air, and that rivers have stars. And I remember that fire is sacred, that flames have memory, and that the sound of the drum is the heartbeat of the land. And I remember that land protectors are warriors, only because we cannot be like forests in a world where forests die. But when forests are allowed to be alive, warriors will be ancestors in Father Sky. And I remember that my memory is sacred because the earth has shown me life. And when we remember that the future has forest, the land will once more thrive. And I remember when the future and the past became ancestral because my dreams told me the land could never die. So the future and the past collapsed in time, and the path to prophecy began. The most important moment of my life was when I was walking down the streets of New York with 300,000 people that 60 of my friends organized together. That was 5 years ago, and the whole youth movement was on fire across the world. The most important moments of my life today are reminding people that we are in that era of transformation and that we decide what the new cycle of the earth and of our relationship to the earth looks like. And so for me, being here today is an invitation for all of us to take those principles of the earth in our work. And this message is not for the world, it's exactly for us, for the ones who are working on climate, because it is our responsibility to fulfill that prophecy of protection. So let's walk on the earth like she feels love. Let's walk on the earth, not because we have to live from it, but because we have to live with it. Thank you.